the children playing water flowing with blood. The pastor stands on his pulpit while preaching to hell. On a hilltop church with demons ringing the bell. They told twice for the missing and the recently departed. And abused the congregation since 100 days rotted. Suffering is all around, the stench of death in the air. Nobody seems to notice or nobody seems to care. It's just an everyday life in a normal routine. People walking right by but never notice the screams. A backwards philosophy passed down through the ages. Generation of murder written down in these pages. Of a book overlooked and forgotten in history. A place with a secret and surrounded by mystery. I can hear them screaming through the forest at night. They pray with snakes and they poison my mind. I can hear them screaming through the forest at night. They pray with snakes and they poison my mind. Was it a curse or a sickness that breaks in the minds of these sacrilegious hillbillies raised with the swine? No remorse in the souls, in the hearts pitch black. Thirsting for the bloodhound murder contact. Feasting on the brains of the ones they call sinners. Cause we feed us in the kitchen, carving torsos for dinner. In a barn on a meat hook, bodies are hanging. In the cellar by a chain, more bodies are swinging. And in the fields like a scene from a no parking lot. Abandoned for so many years, cars left to rot. And buried in a garden in a hole dug deep. All the bones and the belongings all piled in a heap. Ungodly sounds of torture echo through the trees. The streets of suffering still blowing in the breeze. Not on any map, undiscovered.
Evil. What is the definition of evil? What are its descriptive aspects that set it apart from everything else and gives it a singular observational perspective? These questions have been at the forefront of some of the brightest minds since the dawn of the age of philosophy. However, a majority of scholars, mainly because they seek to establish recognition among other like-minded men in order to gain acceptance by both them and the world so that their work is taken as credible and they can establish a career from it, they do not touch certain topics as they are taboo to them and could endanger their credibility and career. I, however, do not care for notoriety or a career. So I have pondered the questions that the mainstream academia has not. This subject I think is their greatest obstacle in understanding the nature of the world, mankind's aspect of the human condition and even the core drive behind religion. It is here, in the imagination of the mind, that place where one goes to when class was boring or when you're on a long trip as a passenger with an overabundance of free time. This is where the philosophical aspects of Satan and God dwell. The persona of what we view as right and wrong, good and evil, the symbolic icons that we have called over time even up to today, as Satan and God, here they dwell within my mind, which these writings are a window into, and play out their eternal war against each other as I learn and adapt new concepts and new perspectives to history not known, sometimes even to the cultures they originated from. I have always been rather higher in intelligence than most around me. I just never saw what was being offered by the social education systems as worthwhile enough to dedicate myself to learning the extensive details. I realized this at an early age as the failed social system of our era dumped me into the statistical lottery tumbler and I took the typical things that one experiences in such places. Yet, as I was confronted with situations that usually give birth to racism, violence and close-minded anti-socialism, I saw each situation for what it was and made my decision then not to allow those situations to harbor the wrong feelings within me and see things exactly for what they were. Since I have recently dealt with mimics and weekend worshipper wannabes, I shall take a moment to set down my role as Lucifer and get a little real with you, because that is one thing that holds the power to destroy an impersonator is by being real, and one thing that you don't want to do is imitate someone's pain, because that is how you make enemies for life. That is how you make a situation go from arguments over ideals and beliefs into personal scars that last long after the argument is done. Yo mama jokes classify under this topic, just to put that out there. Now, you see, when I was younger and shuffled around in the system, given up by my family to the state, I was placed at one point in a group home until they could place me in a foster care facility. This program was unknowingly run by a Black Panther, not one of the nice ones either, a radical branch as I came to find out later. This man was abusive and had hatred in his heart towards white people, and us kids were the ones that he took that out on. From the first minute I walked in the door I was made an example of, was told I could not close my eyes during the day, they shaved my head bald, I had asthma as a kid and was forced to run laps despite doctor's orders. So when I collapsed, unable to breathe, they did not call an ambulance but instead took me in and threw me in a cold shower and left me there. Needless to say I escaped that night, and when I was caught they took me right back to the same place. This time I was told to piss over a trash can since I wanted to run like an animal, body slammed face first into the floor and had a 45 pounds barbell weight shackled to my leg that I had to sleep with and shower with day in and day out. Eventually the social worker who oversaw my case found out and came, but not before and during this for almost a month and a half. As soon as that thing came off my ankle and the coast was clear, I was gone, be sure of that. Now being surrounded by swamp that I had to wade through, sometimes up to my chest, filled with alligators, water moccasins and leeches, I had taken a moment when I had the chance, to collect myself and figure out a plan. As I sat there I thought about what had happened and decided that I could not allow myself to judge an entire culture of people for one asshole's actions. I did not hold the entire culture of black people responsible for what this man did, and when the riots began here recently that issue came to mind. Once again I put aside what had happened and instead used this situation to try and help people regain control of their senses. Using this persona I emulate here and knowing the negativity that surrounds the name, I put myself in the middle of the rising hatred against the white culture and told my story. I suggested the extreme limit that they were heading towards anyways, and hearing this coming from someone with my name caused the older community, among them, to second-guess the direction this movement was going. So for you, Phil, to assume that you are me, to mock my name and my pain in such the way that you have is highly offensive to me. If this situation were placed in Jesus' name and it was he that you mocked, which you have by assuming all those names you have tossing them around like they're free candy, I think he would ask you there, question, how have you bled for me lately? Or what act of martyrdom or sainthood have you done that makes you think you are worthy to walk in these shoes? I speak on these subjects because of where I've walked and suffered, because of that, I get it. It's not hard to understand some of the positions he was put in because I've been through similar shit, but like him, I tried not to let it faze me, to change me into the monster people like you are counting on me becoming so you can mimic me and lull the masses to what you say. They say that Lucifer is a character of fiction and that he isn't real. Well, I've proved that otherwise. Without knowing or trying to emulate your prophecies, as I've mentioned here as being born forth from your sins, or if you know my previous activities have swayed the leaders of the nations or having caused the nations to tremble, which I cannot do any more as I was given explicit instruction not to, even though it was relieving the pressure building in the Yellowstone volcano, which is now at a critical stage, or the supercell storms that was dampening the climate change effect, but I was given explicit instruction not to do any more either, but that's a whole other topic. I'm not building a religion based on what you all have come to believe is fiction. I am building a persona through actions I've done and obstacles I've faced, not a fairy tale character but a real tangible, thinking individual who was built by ways that even Jesus had warned you all of, born forth from the sins of man upon himself. I've already had 2 of my long-time viewers start to buy into your bullshit that you walk around like some second messiah based off the warpings of my own knowledge given on Pnai's channel and other religious figures' knowledge, but you honestly have no idea what it's like to be us. Facing people like you is a common thing after a while. Goose far brah. Gotta calm down. For you viewers out there, I ask that you set down the trademark, opinions crafted by men who did not know me and simply look at my works with an open perspective, not as an enemy but as someone who seeks the truth and shares what he learns from perspectives not commonly observed by the mainstream view. I may be right, I may be wrong, but something to keep in mind that many of my views and information is derived from publicly accessible sources, which means there are more than just me that may believe what they have learned. In this, I am not your enemy here, it's what information is available to the world, and keeping things hidden and secret is only feeding the flames of this. Okay, so now with that said, let me go into some insight on the 7 deadly sins. First, let me say this is an abridged perspective and I could go into much more detail, but info did. That would take the journey of enlightenment out for you all, and I wouldn't want to make things too simple. Now, after taking a look at the sins and virtues, I must point out something. For one, the known 7 deadly sins and virtues I do not think are correct. They are listed as follows: pride, anger, envy, lust, greed, gluttony and sloth. This is, I think, is incorrect. One thing I have noticed is that each sin is separate from the other, and though it may have its associated sins that they are derived from, being one major basic action of emotion that fuels each of the associated aspects of its definition, they should not be associated with the other sins in order to remain separated. Such as pride and envy. Pride is a form of self-absolved infatuation. It comes from a transgression or devolved form of self-confidence which comes from having faith in yourself or others that provides the necessary strength to overcome the fear of the unknown, which is connected to valor. However, when someone becomes too full of fame and glory, they become blind to the transgression from confidence into vanity and pride. Fame and glory are forms of lust, a desire to be recognized for immaterial things such as heroism and acts of kindness. So in basic summary, pride is a form of lust and should be considered an associated emotion of lust, not a sin in itself. The other is envy. This is much more simple to define, as it is a form of greed, but then again so is lust, for lust is a desire to covet both the material and immaterial, which is derived from the emotion of greed. The same with gluttony, once again another form of greed through the hoarding of specific objects, both material and immaterial. As for anger, that can be associated to so much more than that description and has a higher range of effect, and can be associated to envy through jealousy. For when someone is angry, the lust for vengeance and retribution. So the question is, which is derived from which? Is anger a form of greed, or is greed a form of anger? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Greed is a desire to covet. Anger is an emotion caused by someone's trespasses against another. When one feels he has been wronged by either someone or something, then the emotion of anger swells within, driving one to lash out against that object. Patience and understanding can be used to abate anger, but if the individual does not either succumb to his defeat and allow himself to become a submissive of that obstacle, or if the obstacle is not removed, then it is inevitable that anger will one day overcome patience and understanding. That doesn't help much. Let's dig deeper. Greed is derived from the need for something to usually fill the gap within oneself or one's life. This is usually caused by the denial or absence of something in a person's life. Thus greed emerges to ensure that loss is never experienced again. So there is no association to anger or greed themselves, and their causes come from a person's actions. The action of the person or object or even concept causes the emotions of sin to form. Now I'm not here to realign your perspectives of sin, merely to open your eyes to the fact that there is an imbalance here, and if there are a set 7 deadly sins, I do not think we have the complete set of references here, such as blasphemy. I've heard this action be called the unforgivable sin or sin against the spirit. However, blasphemy can be associated with being caused by anger and resentment, so thus an action of vengeance. Also, I notice that adultery and idolatry are not included in the 7 deadly sins. It may be due to the fact that There is a branch of principle emotionally based and fueled actions that are sins, and that the 7 deadly sins are sins committed by our carnal emotions. These emotions are capable of being felt by all living creatures, but it is our ability to resist these basic carnal or instinctive emotions that separate us from animals. They are what defines us as being humans. If you think about it, dogs can love and they can hate too. They can feel the need for greed, otherwise they wouldn't try to bury bones in the backyard. But our gift as humans that separate us from them is our capacity to comprehend these emotions we feel and decide against our instinctive responses and use common sense to take another course of action. That is the defining difference and basic outline of what we call the human condition, I think. Let me know your thoughts and views in the comments section. I personally feel like I am led back to the drawing board on this one and must come to a deeper understanding of the subjects. Which means more research.
I admit that in the past I've been a nasty. They weren't kidding when they called me, well, a witch. But you'll find that nowadays I've mended all my ways, repented, seen the light and made a switch. True, yes. And I fortunately know a little magic. It's a talent that I always have possessed. And dear lady, please don't laugh, I use it on behalf of the miserable, lonely and depressed. Pathetic. Poor unfortunate souls in pain, in need. This one longing to be thinner, that one wants to get the girl, and do I help them? Yes, indeed. Those poor unfortunate souls, so sad, so true. They come flocking to my cauldron, crying, spells us to please, and I help them. Yes, I do. Now it's happened once or twice. Someone couldn't pay the price, and I'm afraid I had to rake them across the coals. Yes, I've had the odd complaint, but on the whole I've been a saint. To those poor unfortunate souls